Good evening, everyone. So, the purpose of today's discussion with Gav is to have a look at the short-term snow and cold potential. So, there's a cold snap at the moment, and we're going to maybe cover the recent past, or what's been happening today. Then we're going to go on to what's snow potential for the next few days, and look at the next week. And we'll, throughout the discussion, which is probably going to last somewhere between 1 hour and 2 hours, probably closer to 1 hour, depending on the interest. We'll be taking your questions, which you can either post on the YouTube chat or you can post on Gav's weather vids page, and we'll probably also check Twitter comments as well. So there's all those places that we'll be checking for questions and comments, and then later on we'll be going through the long range forecasts, because there's some interesting new ECMWF data to check out for that. So that's how we're going to be starting. So I thought we'd start with the radar, and feel free to jump in whenever you like, Gav.
Good evening, Quantum. Good evening, everyone. So we've had some snow already across parts of the north today, so we thought that would be the best place to start our live discussion tonight.
So I've got the radar up here. So this is Rain Today's premium radar, and it shows the precipitation type. So blue is rain, hail is yellow, red is snow, and grey is sort of a wintry mix. So this is the last. So this is basically 10 minutes ago. The situation, and there's actually been a little bit more than I thought there was going to be today. So there's quite a few wintry showers in Northern Ireland, and also there's a few reports of snow in Leeds, which I guess was slightly unexpected as well.
That's right. I wasn't expecting any snow really today away from elevation, so it's come down to lowish levels, I think, this afternoon.
Oh yes, it has done, and it's been quite surprising. So I've got XE weather up here, and we can just do an animation of, say, the last 6 hours. And you can see sort of, I mean, there's been lots of snow showers in Scotland. That's probably not too surprising. But yeah, in the last couple of hours, there's been sort of snow a bit of snow in the Leeds Bradford area. And I just came from there, actually. Although I didn't see any snow myself, it certainly felt cold out there.
It feels really cold here actually tonight. I think it's going to be a really real hard frost tonight.
That's already down to -3 in Benson, that well-known.
Oh right. Yeah, they'll probably be down to -5, -6. I would have thought, unless it clouds over. I suppose those showers might come down across
the Cheshire Gap, maybe.
Yeah, they might do.
Yeah, well, there's not actually that many in sort of that area. Maybe the wind's coming more from the west. Not actually sure which direction the wind's coming from. Oh yeah, it's coming sort of more from the west. So maybe, but if the winds become more northwesterly, we might see a few showers in the Cheshire Gap.
That's right, and of course, if the showers push down into the Midlands and southern England, then it won't be as cold as it feels like it's going to be now.
Indeed. Actually, another quite interesting one is the UK snow map, and basically this is a collation of all the tweets that have been made recently about snow, and you can see where people have been tweeting about it. So sort of in the Leeds Bradford area and West Yorkshire and Northwest England, there's been quite a few snow reports. Again, this was not entirely expected.
No, I wasn't expecting it. If I'd known that there was going to be that level of wintry showers today, I probably would have done snow watch yesterday. So I wasn't expecting it to be quite as widespread as this.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't actually looked at the high resolution models in detail, so we'll definitely have a look at those. Actually, we could probably have a look at those now. So again, Meteoseal, great website. So I suppose we'll start with the high resolution WRF model. This is 2 kilometers, so it's very high resolution, about the same as the Met Office's model that we can't access, but this is basically our substitute. So actually, this doesn't look like it's updated, does it? Is this the 6Z? No.
That's showing, yeah, 6.
Oh, actually, it must be the 12Z. Actually, I think it's the 12Z. Oh.
Yeah, it is. I think that's 12s. Yeah.
Okay, so actually, we've got these band of the WRF is actually showing quite well this band of wintry showers that's been moving across the UK in the last couple of hours, and we've also got a few of these snow showers in Scotland as well.
That's right.
Oh, actually, and as you pointed out, with the showers coming through the Cheshire Gap, what we do see, I think, is the winds becoming more northwesterly.
That's right.
And then sort of, this is French time, so I think this is 1 hour ahead. But by a sort of 5 o'clock in the morning, there's quite a lot of wintry showers.
That's right. We're even getting down in towards the central Midlands, so that would lift the temperature up as well. So perhaps it won't be quite as hard a frost as it feels like it will be at the moment.
Oh, indeed. And actually, I mean, if you look in sort of this sort of area, you can see that there's actually a bit of snow over the sea as well, which kind of when I see that, that's sort of an indication that the snow is basically getting down to lower levels. Maybe not in northwest England, but certainly in Scotland, I would guess there'd be a dusting of snow by tomorrow morning, even on sort of lower levels, and on higher ground, of course, there might be a couple of centimeters.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, especially for central northern Scotland.
But this again looks like, I mean, apart from away from the sort of coast and away from the sort of Manchester city centre, Liverpool kind of area, away from the urban parts, it looks like this is still getting down to quite low levels.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we could anyway. I think through sort of northwest England and down into the Midlands and Wales as well, probably could wake up to a slight dusting of snow in the morning.
I think it is just going to be a slight dusting.
Yeah, it won't be centimeters of snow or anything like that. But
I mean, tomorrow morning, I mean, there's actually some really quite beefy wintry showers here.
That would be probably a covering of snow at elevation for North Wales and the Northwest Midlands.
But maybe even temporary deposits to low levels. I mean, I think that the sort of snow is going to be to more inland parts, and of course over high, because like over the coast it's going to be rain. But this is the kind of situation where you can imagine that if you're in somewhere like Liverpool or Manchester and you're down in the city centre, it's just going to be raining. But then you get a little bit outside of the city, and then suddenly you get in these sort of very wet, large flaked snow showers.
That's right.
Very, very big flakes, very wet sort of, and it won't be settling at sort of 10 o'clock in the morning, but I can kind of imagine that there will be some very big flakes mixed in with the rain with this. This is
certainly looks like that. Yeah, there'll be some frustrated people, but don't get any snowflakes at all. And there'll be some very happy people. I think tomorrow it's one of those sort of events.
This is the snow. Actually, I mean, this is obviously exaggerated. It's an initialization problem more than anything else. So Scotland has been over initialized. So just take that to be sort of. This is okay, but the initialization has got the snow depth wrong to begin with. But if we take it to 11 o'clock in the morning, we can see that. I mean, I think this is in centimeters, right? I mean, obviously, this is an exaggeration. I can't believe that 4 to 6 centimeters of snow is actually going to be falling. I mean, this is just falling snow, by the way. This isn't settled snow.
It seems unlikely, but I suppose it might be picking up on the intensity of the showers. They might get quite intense, perhaps. Don't know.
But I think what these models tend to do is they tend to smear everything out a little bit. So you tend to get showers that are locally heavier. But affect a smaller area, and the models tends to smear it out over a larger area. So you'll get these occasionally quite beefy showers, but they will affect a much smaller area and for a much shorter amount of time. So even though the snow could actually be quite heavy, it'll only last for 5 or 10 minutes.
You would look at that and think there's going to be a really deep snow event tomorrow.
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But what this does indicate to me is that the fact that this is sort of over such a wide area is that the snow showers must be getting to quite low levels. I mean, outside of this coastal part, outside of the coastal and urban parts, I honestly think we could be seeing some wet snow to low levels tomorrow morning.
Yeah, that's right. It does look like that could occur, especially again for the sort of North Midlands and Central Midlands, North West Wales, those sort of areas.
Exactly. But I guess I think for as long as you're outside of the coastal parts and the urban centres, I mean, this is not going to be much, but there could be actually some quite impressive falls of snow in terms of the way it's falling, because in this sort of marginal situation, where the air is still actually quite warm, and coming off the sea, the snow crystals conglomerate to really quite impressive sizes. So I would be not surprised to see some very large snowflakes tomorrow. You know, the really sort of wet, large snowflakes. And of course, if the snowflakes are bigger, then they survive longer to hit the ground. But I don't think it'll be settling. I just think that in these northwestern parts, we could be seeing some. Yeah,
it should certainly feel quite seasonable anyway.
Oh, definitely. Let's see. Let's continue this anyway. Actually, I can put this on because this gives us a clearer indication of the whole sort of situation. You can see that the hash line says where the precipitation is turning to snow, and we also got the isobars on under pressure, and so we can tell what the wind direction is. So actually, these showers seem to continue for much of the day, although turning a little bit more to rain during the afternoon, as one might expect. But even tomorrow evening, these showers are still going. So for parts of northwest England, we could be seeing potentially heavy wintry showers for much of the day.
Yeah, somewhere might get a surprise tomorrow from that, because it looks like once these showers are on, they're on through most of the day, doesn't it? So
I think I do think this model is probably over-egging the potential though.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. But what somewhere at elevation might get a bit of a surprise tomorrow.
Like somewhere like a 100, 200 meters above sea level, I can see them getting maybe a covering. But even I'd like to say even at lower levels, probably see some wet flakes of snow out of all this.
Don't be surprised if you see some flakes of snow anywhere in the Midlands and Wales and Northern England tomorrow. Well, Northwest England.
Northwest England, yeah. I don't think I'll be seeing any in the sort of.
No, I don't think it'll get over the Pennines much.
No. So one other model I quite like using is this one, the Arome. Now, the one thing I would say about the Arome is it does a lot of things very badly. It's terrible for thunderstorms in the summer. It massively underestimates thunderstorm potential, and it also underestimates shower potential. So this will show virtually no showers because it consistently underestimates shower potential. But the one thing that this gets right time and time again is the precipitation type. I have never known the Arome to get the precipitation type wrong. And there have been situations where every other model has predicted rain and the Arome has predicted snow, and the Arome has been right. And there's also been the converse, so where every other model has predicted snow and the Arome has predicted rain, and the Arome has still been right. So this is fantastic for precipitation type. It's just not very good for anything else.
This will be one that shows up in my snow watches then.
Yeah, it's a truly fantastic model. But that's my experience with it. That it gets the precipitation right pretty much bang on. It just doesn't do well with much else, and it massively over initializes. So I mean, you can see like 7 o'clock, we've got this big band of winteriness across like most of, this is unrealistic. It significantly over initializes. But if we go away from the over initialization, it then goes to the other extreme where it has nothing at all on the map. So you can see at 5 o'clock in the morning, there's nothing being shown at all.
I can see, yeah.
Which is the issue with the Arome is it so underestimates the showers that it's so hard to see anything. So okay, here we go. We've got a little bit of something. So again, you can't really see much, but it is going for sort of yellows in there as well, and a little bit of red as well. So yellow is ice pellets, sort of like I would take that to mean sort of general winteriness.
Yeah, that's focusing on North Wales, isn't it?
Yeah, I wouldn't take the distribution of precipitation because again, it doesn't get this right, but it does get the type right. See, I see a mixture of blue, yellow, and pink, and actually, looking at this, it seems that the Arome is going for it more on higher ground. So whereas the Wharf had it to lower levels pretty much sort of ubiquitously outside of the coastal parts, the Arome is going for it more on higher ground, with some sort of sleet, wet snow to lower levels at times. So I think this is probably more realistic in terms of some winteriness to lower levels at times, but like most of the snow is restricted to higher ground.
That's right. It looks like it's going to be more at elevation, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's...
But again, anywhere could get some flakes of snow tomorrow, and don't be surprised if you do. Away from the south and southeast, there's not any evidence that much is going to get through to there, I don't think.
So at the other extreme, we have the Heerlam. So what the Heerlam loves to do is overestimate snow potential. So this one will just be quite entertaining because it will probably predict blizzards everywhere. But I tend to use this one as being sort of the worst case scenario type thing going on. So this is the Spanish model, and it quite significantly generally overestimates the amount. But saying that, actually looking at this, it doesn't seem to be doing that much, does it really?
It doesn't look over the top, does it?
No, that's quite odd, that is. Huh. Maybe the Wharf is overdoing it.
Might be.
The Wharf is usually quite good, though.
It's going to be one of those that's an outcast, isn't it? It's just going to be a case of look out your window through tomorrow, and if you see flakes of snow, don't be surprised. But if you don't, then don't be surprised either.
I'm gonna have a quick look at the Euro 4. This is the one. This is the one that the Met. Well, this is sort of the regional version of the Met Office's model. So it's basically all we and mortals can access. But whatever this says will be essentially what the Met Office says, more or less.
More or less, yeah. I think that's right.
So again, this is sort of. I mean, again, this one has gone for a lot less showers than the Wharf. The Wharf has gone sort of the scenario with a lot of showers, but this one has gone. I mean, actually, one thing is, I was going to say that maybe the reason the Wharf has gone for snow at quite low levels is due to evaporational cooling, but that's probably not right, because you only get evaporational cooling when the wind tends to be quite light, and the wind's quite strong, isn't it? Often, so that's probably not it.
It does look quite a strong wind. The only thing that could offset that, I suppose, is if they're very heavy, and then that might cause evaporative cooling. But the wind, it looks a bit brisk, really, for that to happen.
If the showers are heavier, it tends to cool the atmosphere much more efficiently. So maybe it's just because the showers are so heavy. But the Euro 4 is going for a lot less shower potential as well. So I guess it'll come down to how heavy the showers are. If the showers are quite heavy, then we would expect to see more flakes of snow to lower levels. But if the showers are more scattered, like this model is suggesting, then maybe not. And I would be sort of inclined to say that maybe we'll somewhere between the two. Maybe somewhere between the Arraeum with nothing at all and the Wharf with loads of showers. Quite a few scattered showers tomorrow morning, but not.
It could be that Euro 4 is about right with that. That's a blend. That looks like it's like a blend between the two, doesn't it? So that could be about right.
Okay. So I think we've done all the short-term stuff. What do you want to do now? We can either move on to more medium-term or maybe take some questions. What do you think?
I've got a few questions that have already been sent to me, so we could do those.
Okay. Do you want to read out your questions?
And then we'll move on to the midday runs, probably. So okay. We've got Mark Green, who has asked me about the decrease in solar activity, and does this relate to blocking? And is this caused by this blocking? Is that caused by a decrease in solar energy? So there's less energy going into the PV, allowing a polar vortex, allowing more meridionality. So we know that there is a connection between lower solar activity and an increased risk of northern blocking. So, I mean, you can never say 100% that there's a cause and an effect, but we do know that around or just after solar minimum, you tend to get more in way of northern blocking. So that does sound like it's probably a fairly sensible assumption that Mark has seen there. We've also heard from Mark Kanish, who's asked a couple of questions. He's asked if the weather turns milder in December, so next month, does that mean there won't be any cold weather in December? And also, does a mild autumn equal a mild winter? So we've had a reasonably mild autumn. Where it was a bit cold a bit cool in September, and it's getting a bit colder now. But I think overall autumn temperatures will be coming out milder than average. So there's no connection, I don't think, particularly between a mild autumn and a mild winter. So you can get mild winters do follow mild autumns, but also cold winters follow mild autumn. So I don't think there's particularly a connection between that. And in terms of December, so if the weather turns milder, I assume Mark means if weather turns milder in the next week or two, does that write off, excuse me, December? And I would say that not at all. There could be further cold snaps at any point through December, and also, of course, through the winter as well. And Mark has also asked, if there's a late December flip to mild weather, does that write off the rest of winter? Again, that isn't the case. If the weather turns milder through December, then of course cold weather can come back at any point through January and February. Brendan has asked about solar cycle 24, how weak the solar cycle is, and that it was predicted by John Casey, and he also predicted that the second peak of the solar maximum would be, this is a little bit of an involved question, so if you're not up on solar activity, I'll try and get through as quick as I can. So the second peak of the solar maximum was higher than the first peak of the solar maximum, which is quite unusual, quite an unusual event. And apparently John Casey predicted this. And Brendan's asked, could all this mean that we are heading into a grand solar minimum, as I think has been predicted by John Casey? And so what I'd say with that for the next solar cycle 25. So what I'd say with that is that there aren't really that many predictions for solar cycle 25, but what predictions there have been seem to be indicating the chance of of a weaker solar cycle again for solar cycle 25, whether it was to come out as weak as solar cycle 24, the current solar cycle. I think that is quite uncertain, but there are certainly a few predictions out there that seem to indicate that solar cycle 25 will be a weak cycle, and if it is, of course, that could mean particularly early in the solar cycle, in the next 2-3 years, next 3 or 4 years, that could mean we may see an increased risk of some more blocked and colder winters. David has asked about seismic activity and the weather, and I'm going to say that is something that I don't know anything about at all, whether there is a connection between seismic activity and the weather. So if anybody knows about that, then they can always let us know, because that isn't something that I'm at all sure about. Darren Cummings has asked, will the decrease in solar activity and also the active hurricane season that we've had this year, will that increase the chance of getting stratospheric warmings and a colder winter this year? So what I would say with that, and Andy has asked a similar question, is increased blocking so far that we've seen so far associated with the active hurricane season that we've had this year. And also Andreas has asked a very similar question to that as well. What is the cause of the blocking patterns that we've got at the moment, particularly, which is quite unusual because we have a fairly cold stratospheric temperature at the moment. What I would say with that is that I suspect one of the reasons that we are not seeing the stratosphere and the troposphere connecting with one another at the moment, because I say we have got a very cold stratosphere, one of the reasons could be that we've had this active hurricane season. And yeah, I think the active hurricane season may well be having an effect on the troposphere at the moment, and that might be the reason that the troposphere and the stratosphere are more at odds with one another than has been the case in the past few years, perhaps. And finally, for the questions that have been sent to me, Andy has always also asked, are seasonal models more useless than usual this year due to the events with ENSO? So what's happened with ENSO is that earlier in the year, around June, July, we was actually expecting around June, July to go to an El Nino event, a warm event. And then very late, quite unusual, very late, we went into a cold event, a La Nina. And I think that uncertainty with that, the very late developing La Nina that we got in the Pacific Ocean, I think that probably does mean that the models, the season models, are trying to play catch up a little bit. So maybe we should take longer range output with a little bit more of a pinch of salt than usual. So I hope that answers all the questions that have been sent to me in advance of tonight's live broadcast.
Well, was that just the ones in advance?
That's the ones in advance, yeah.
So we haven't even got to the ones that have been asked today.
That's right, no.
Um,
A
well,
few of those have been asked today, actually. Yeah.
I okay, we'll try and go through some of these ones on the chat for the next 4 minutes, and then come back to some of today's questions later. Otherwise, we're going to have too long.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I had to turn my microphone off. Andy, Sam, will we get a blocking pattern then? Well, we're going to be discussing this in a few minutes with the medium-term stuff anyway, and the answer to that is a very quick yes. There is going to be a blocking pattern.
It certainly looks that way.
Indeed. Apple UK has asked, in your opinion, have the showers that have occurred today been overestimated? We touched on this earlier. I think they've been underestimated.
I think they've been underestimated a little bit, yeah. I think there was enough today that if I'd known it was going to be quite as widespread as that, I probably would have done a snow watch yesterday. So I think they've been underestimated a little bit.
The Wolf probably got it right now. So Guyanus asks, why is snow around the UK always close to the coasts? I do actually know the answer to this question. It's a British analogue of the lake effect. So you'll notice that in summertime, the opposite happens. So showers in the heart of summer are all inland. During the winter, they're all along the coast. And the reason for this is that in summer, the showers are caused by the sun heating the boundary layer right next to the surface. And that heat causes instability, which causes the showers to blow up. In the winter, there's not enough heat to provide the instability to create showers using that method. So the only way to get showers in winter is to use a different heat source. And the heat source that we have in winter is the ocean, because the ocean stores a vast amount of heat up during the summer. It's very warm compared to the land. It's still 8 or 9 degrees. And so when you get really cold air moving over the warm sea, you get this instability and you get these big showers. So the reason that they tend to hug the coast is because the instability is actually caused by the contrast between the warm ocean and the cold air above it. So the showers don't tend to last long inland because there's no instability over land. You have to get them blown in off the sea. So if the winds are a little bit stronger, they tend to blow in a little bit further. Or if the temperatures are a little bit colder, then you tend to get bigger showers because the instability is greater. This is why the snow showers actually tend to be stronger at night. People might have noticed that the heavier showers tend to happen at night because the air's colder at night. Whereas in the summer, the heaviest showers tend to happen at sort of 6 o'clock in the evening when the sun's still up. So that's the answer to that one.
That's a great answer, Quantum.
Let's see. Is there any other what are the chances that this winter fails like last year?
Well, that's always a risk for the UK, isn't it? So I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic. I don't want to give anything away because I'm not doing the winter forecast yet, and that's issue.
Well, we'll be covering more long range stuff later during the show. Anyway,
that's covered. That'll be in a week's time, a week on Sunday. But I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic, certainly this year, with everything that we're seeing compared to last year. But a failure is always of winter is always a constant risk for the UK, just purely because of our position in the world.
And then finally, we've also got a question asked by Joanne Van Aert. I think it's about ice shelves breaking off. So I think he's talking about Larsen. I think we're down to Larsen C now. I remember Larsen A went in the 1970s. I think Larsen B. I think I was still a child when Larsen B went, so probably sometime in the 1990s. I can't remember when Larsen B went. I think we're now. I can't remember which Larsen we're up to, but I don't really know too much about breaking ice shelves influencing El Nino. I'm not sure if you do, Gav.
No, that's not something I'm aware of either.
I think it does affect the Southern Oscillation, though. It could. I think there's an association between that kind of thing and the Antarctic sea ice, which tends to have a greater coverage when you get these ice shelves breaking off because of all because it changes the wind patterns around the southern hemisphere.
It might have a localized effect.
But I can't really see anything that's going on in the southern hemisphere influencing us. I mean, to be honest, I don't really think that the El Nino really influences us that much. That something going on in the south. I mean, that's about as far away as you can really get, isn't it? I mean,
I think it depends on the strength of the thing. So the one we had a couple of years ago for 2015, 16, that was a monster Nino, and that probably did at least partly explain the extraordinarily warm December that occurred at exactly the same time in December 2015.
You predicted that, and I was quite skeptical because I didn't really think there was much relation between El Nino, but it was a good prediction. It turned out to be a very, very mild winter.
Well, I lived through the one before that, 97, 98. So, and that one, all the extraordinarily mild weather was in February of that monster Nino. So there does seem to be a connection when you get very, very strong El Ninos.
But maybe not a connection for just sort of El Ninos in general, only the really strong one.
I think for weaker ENSO events, and it's the same for La Nina as well, probably, if that gets very strong, then it might have an effect. But for the weaker ENSO events, that's most of them don't reach a sort of very extreme level of warmth that we saw in 2015, 16. So most ENSO events, they have an effect for the Pacific and also for North America, of course. We're downstream of North America, but that's not a continuous effect for us from weaker ENSO events.
Okay, so I think we'll come back to it. I mean, there's probably plenty more questions, and someone's alerted me to questions on Twitter, and we will be answering.
Yeah, I'll have a look at Twitter and Facebook and Gav's vids as well as we go along.
But I think we're going to have another segment now to look at sort of short to medium term. Now I'm just going to put the screen share back on. So
I've not seen any model output at all this evening.
No, neither have I. So, I mean, I've seen the 6Z, and the 6Z wasn't actually that good. It was a bit of a downgrade from the 0Z, but I haven't seen the 12Z yet. So I don't know what do you want. We can either have 850 temperatures or we can have 500 millibar heights. I don't mind too much. They're both
probably 500 millibar heights.
Okay, because these give us sort of a better indication of the big overall pattern.
That's right.
So this is the 12s, and like I said, I haven't seen it. So just sort of running through. So we start off with this cold northwesterly wind, which is bringing in the showers to the northwestern part. So this is Saturday. I'll just levitate that up a little bit. So by the time we get to Sunday, the winds are down a little bit, and we've got this little ridge of high pressure coming into the UK. So that will calm things down. But I imagine Sunday morning, first thing, is going to be pretty cold.
Yeah, it looks very frosty for Sunday morning.
Sunday looks lovely though, with this ridge of high pressure coming across the cold air. It'll be light winds, you know.
Yeah, I think Sunday's going to be a nice day.
Bright sunshine, but maybe not for Northern Ireland with increasing cloud coming in later.
Yeah, it goes downhill a bit for them, I would think.
And then we've got this trough coming in. If this had gone further south, it might have been interesting. I think people were commenting that it might have been interesting, but I can't see anything interesting happening with this.
No, it might be a little bit of sleety stuff preceding it over the high ground of Scotland, but
I mean, we're inside a war. I mean, there's if we look at the precipitation, see that thing there. I think that's probably where's the warm front? See, there isn't really a warm front on this to any real degree. So to get snow from these kind of things, you want a really strong warm front. That'll give you snow. But it actually seems that the warm front is almost non-existent in terms of the precipitation. So we got our cold front here. The warm front is almost non-existent. So if you were to get snow, you want a really strong warm front. And actually you can get snow even if it's not even that cold, because ahead of the warm front you get so much evaporation. That heat is removed so rapidly that and the wind is light that you can get snow even over relatively mild circumstances. I always say that if the warm front is really strong, you don't need -5, -6 on your 850 temperatures. You can get away with -1, -2, and I've even seen it before when it's been in winds 2010. We even had it when the 850 temperature was positive.
Yeah, you can get snow with surprising. A lot of people think, excuse me, that the -5 ice firm is kind of like the be all and end all for snow, but you can get snow in the right conditions and the right parameters. You can get snow a lot milder than the -5 at 850 HPA.
I actually think it's still a very good measure, though. It's just that it's often used inappropriately, because the 850 temperature, you just got to sort of determine where it comes from. So if your snow is in the form of showers, like it is today, you want really -7, -8 to get snow. If it's on a cold front, you also probably want -7, -8. But if it's on a warm front, -2, -3. So -5 is probably a good average of all those conditions, but it's much better to look at what feature is producing the snow. And if it's a warm front or an occluded front, -2, -3 is fine. But if it's a cold front or if it's showers, you want -7, -8.
That's right. And of course, the more depth of cold that you have, so go down to -8, -9, -10, and below that, then the more intense the showers can become as well.
Exactly. I should point out that you have to have a strong warm front. Weak warm fronts never produce snow; they produce rain, because a weak warm front it doesn't extend into the upper atmosphere, which you need it to do. Anyway, the point is there's basically no warm front on this, so there's not going to be any snow. There's a cold front, but cold fronts, like I say, they don't produce snow unless it's really, really cold. I mean, like even in 2000, I remember even in the heart of 2010, we had a cold front coming through, and it produced sleet, and that was an exceptionally cold month. And even then, the cold front didn't produce snow properly. I mean, getting a cold front to produce snow is actually really rare. They very rarely do it. You want a warm front or an occluded front. Cold fronts are terrible, and this is a cold front, so we're not going to get snow out of that, I don't think. I mean, over the hills we will, but
yeah, preceded over the Scottish mountains, there might be a bit of sleet or snow, but nothing at lower levels.
So I mean, it's unfortunate that there's nothing that's going to come out of that. Then so this is Monday, which is sort of quick look at the air mass temperature. So Monday is a sort of average type. It's going to be cold, but not desperately cold. I wouldn't have thought there'd be any snow at lower levels on Monday.
I think for the south, particularly, Monday will be less cold than Sunday.
Could be actually be quite mild in the far south, if relatively speaking, not that mild. But Monday looks sort of an average type winter's day, not that cold. This thing could be interesting though. There's more potential here if a warm front develops on that.
Possibly, yeah. And then behind it, we've got the northerly wind.
Oh, okay, it's probably not
in again.
Yeah, probably not cold enough actually to get anything on that. But anyway, I mean, maybe if it sticks around for a while, we can get some cold air sort of coming in behind, and maybe
if there's a stall, you can get an undercut. So and then things start to get more interesting.
I mean, you can, for this situation, you probably need the short-term models, but it probably isn't cold enough to get any snow on that. So these are probably just going to produce rain. But then behind it, we get this really quite impressive-looking northerly by next Tuesday.
That's a proper northerly, isn't it?
That is a proper northerly.
That's going a long way north.
It is. And the worst part of this, actually, the thing that's really disappointing is that we haven't had a pattern like this in years, a proper winter northerly. We've been waiting years to see something like this. And guess what happens when we finally get it? I'm just going to put the 850 anomalies on here and put it to next Tuesday. So this is what next Tuesday looks like. The Arctic is 16 degrees above normal. So even though we've got this deep northerly, the Arctic is about as warm as it can possibly get.
Yeah, it's not fair, is it?
So when we finally get the perfect pattern, the Arctic just so happens to be 10 degrees above average for the time of year, and sort of that wouldn't even matter if it was January, but we're in late November, and so at this time of year it kind of does matter. So
yeah, it will make a difference. It won't be. It's not going to. There's no sign yet. I don't think it's going to be a December 2010 that it's going to be sort of freezingly severely cold at this point. Of course, if the blocking pattern was to continue and go on, then eventually we might tap into some really cold air. But at this point, there's no sign that it's going to get to that depth of cold.
No, I would agree, because I mean, it's the whole. I mean, with climate change, we're going to expect more of the warm Arctic, cold continents pattern. So where we in winter, even though we get warm Arctic, we do tend to get cold continents. If we were to stick in this pattern for a while, eventually we were going to tap into the rather cold air in Siberia. That's actually what happened in 2010. So in 2010, it didn't even matter if the Arctic was warm. But the unfortunate reality is that this is a really impressive northerly. You don't see these northerlies very often, but in terms of the air mass temperature, that's it's not impressive at all. I mean, this is a bog standard sort of northerly toppler type conditions. In terms of the temperature, it's not impressive at all, which is it's quite disappointing really that once you get a really good pattern, but because the Arctic is so warm,
That's right.
I mean, never it will probably be cold enough for wintry showers. That
it's certainly going to be cold enough there for snow for the north, and there'll certainly be night frost as well. You're going to feel seasonal. I mean, you have to bear in mind that we haven't really had anything particularly cold at all since 12-13. So at least we've got some cold weather, and it's seasonably cold. So.
And I do think on Tuesday or Wednesday or whenever there probably will be a few wintry showers to lower levels in maybe not the south of England, but Midlands, north and northern England. I'd expect to see wintry showers scattered across parts of England to right down to lower levels. But what I would not expect to see is accumulating snow in the inches. That's not what I would. So even though the pattern is still impressive enough to bring snow to quite low levels, quite far south, it's just not impressive enough to give anything that would really
not yet.
Not yet anyway. But if the pattern persists, of course, I mean, if you get a northerly set up for long enough, it's going to turn cold eventually, even if the Arctic is warm. And this actually looks a little bit more impressive than the 6Z. That's the 6Z. This is the 12Z. You can see that so I always took out the magic 552 line. I always say that. Yeah,
take that very importantly.
That's a very important line because if you get that 552 line to Greenland, then that suggests your northerly is going to be persistent. If you can't get this 552 line that far north, then your northerly is going to collapse, it's going to topple over. But the 552 line is right into central Greenland, so this is very impressive. I mean, you can compare the 6Z a lot further south.
That looks really good, doesn't it?
That is a very good pattern.
I think we had an upgrade from 6Z to the 12Z, definitely. And
you can see, actually, you can see that with stuff like this, we've got like little bits of energy going right, sort of. I mean, this will be the perfect situation when we get the energy going right, the jet stream sort of coming right underneath here. We've got our Mediterranean low as well, which is something that also tends to be quite good. So
I always like to see a low pressure around Italy for an extended cold spell.
You can see that with the 6Z, the 552 line is a lot further south, so this is definitely an upgrade.
So gone to Friday now, and still
so all the way out to Friday, and the wind is still coming from the north.
Still got a proper northerly, actually a little bit of a northeasterly tilt to it there, I think.
And that, actually, at this point, the fact that actually there's a little wave in there, and that could be interesting. These northwesterly waves, I'd be very interested in that. Actually, this is something that we can't forecast this far in advance, but there could that little feature there.
It's possible that Thursday to Friday, purely really because of the persistence of the northerly wind, then things might start getting a little bit more interesting for wintry conditions.
Yeah, you can see that the -10 line is getting relatively close now. Like I said, if the Arctic was of a normal temperature, we'd have had this on day 2. We'd have to have waited all the way till Thursday. But we're getting to the point now, actually, by the time we get to Thursday, where the air is cold enough for it to be snowing pretty much everywhere outside of the far south.
I would think so.
I would expect to be, at this point, I would be sort of somewhere like Aberdeen. I would say that we probably would be seeing inches of snow in Aberdeen by this point.
There could be a fair old covering, exposed to the wind.
Somewhere like Newcastle might even see a couple of centimetres as well.
Certainly, I think the second half of the week has a greater risk of snow if the northerly wind persists.
Yeah,
as this is indicating it could do.
The 552 line is certainly a lot further north. It's not Greenland at this point, but it's still pretty close. And you can see it's going north again. So the 552 line never really leaves the coast of Greenland, which is good. So yeah, you can see it go back further north. So this is why it's so much better than the 6Z, because the 6Z it is completely collapsed, but the 12Z has got this 552 line really sort of quite far to the north, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. That should, if that carries on pushing north, it could renew the northerly as well, couldn't it?
Yeah. So sort of Saturday now. This is a whole week away, I can't imagine the temperatures will be that high at this point. Yeah, looks quite cold, doesn't it?
Certainly by night there would be some really hard frost, I would have thought, by that point.
I mean, actually, it's all academic at this point, as we're at 216 hours now, but we can still see that the cold has persisted right until next weekend.
It's more or less still cold, isn't it? Yeah. Because these models will always try and break the block down and revert to sort of the regular pattern, if you like, and the regular pattern will be westerly, southwesterly. So they'll try and revert back to that at all times. So, I mean, that's 200. What are we at now? 216 hours. That's a very long way.
Well, that 240 and the
240, 810. Yeah. That's a very long way for this sort of blocking pattern.
These are the maximum temperatures at 240 hours, and they're still low single digits. I mean, this is probably colder than today. So
yeah, it would be colder than today, most definitely, because it's a persistent northerly wind, and it will get colder as we go along.
I mean, it's still quite disappointing in the sense that if the Arctic was of an average sort of temperature, this would be actually quite an impressive cold spell to speak of. I mean, it wouldn't be 2010 levels, but it would be, we would be seeing quite substantial snow for much of the UK if the Arctic was of a normal temperature. So
yeah, it's a shame that that's happened, but that's the way the cookie crumbles, isn't it?
Indeed. So let's have a look at the ECM now. And my rule for these things is that you look at both models and pick whichever one is the most pessimistic, and that's probably going to be right for winter patterns anyway. But the ECM 0Z was actually quite good. I haven't seen the...
Yeah, the ECM yesterday had a bit of a wobble, didn't it? And then, or was it the day before? I don't know, the days are merging into one now. The ECM has had a wobble, but this morning's looked really quite good, I thought. Yeah,
I thought this morning's was definitely good. So the same sort of pattern. We see this area of low pressure during early next week, sort of lessening the grip of winter for a day or so, and then we have this quite impressive northerly on Tuesday. Look how it's pathetic though, isn't it? Look at the 850 temperatures on that. That's quite insulting, really, isn't it?
And of course, the Norwegian Sea's been very warm as well this autumn, warmer than normal.
That's embarrassing. The 850s were actually colder than that in 2014 on a southwesterly. You remember that year where it was like constant southwesterlies, but actually because it was westerly for so long, we were actually getting air imported from Canada. And
that's right. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't particularly cold, but because it was westerly, constant westerlies all year, eventually by the time we got to January, it was actually cold enough for snow on these westerlies.
That horrible rainy winter where it didn't stop raining all the way through for 13, 14.
Mind you, the southwest of Ireland saw a lot of snow that winter because, of course, it was in the firing line for all this. Yeah. So for some, it was actually quite a good winter, but that's bad. That is. But I mean, you can't really ask for a more perfect northerly than that, can you?
That's fantastic, isn't it?
It really is. There's no cold air. I mean, to be fair, we are still in November, but
it is cold. But it's
yeah.
Synoptics, you would hope that it might be colder than it is. But again, we have to take what we're given. So, and again, we haven't had much.
I want to waste the potential.
Years, so we have to take what we give them.
Perfect synoptics, but no cold air. You can't really ask for better synoptics than this, though, can you? I mean, sort of 2010.
That's tilting the wind into the northeast, isn't it?
I mean, if there was we'll be getting into sort of quite severe cold now. If there was actual cold air embedded in that would be really quite impressive. I mean, we would be seeing heavy, thundery snow showers along the eastern coast, but there's just no cold air there. So there's no cold air at all to tap into.
It's a shame, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, it's the overall pattern is excellent though. We've still got this 552 line over Greenland, which is the main thing. The large scale pattern is fantastic. I mean, this is like your completely meridional type flow with the jet stream having this really wavy pattern.
That's right. If we can sustain that for long enough, eventually we will get some proper cold out of it.
Still nothing though, but it's actually got slightly warmer. Oh dear.
Looking very warm, close to Iceland.
Yeah, I've noticed that you sometimes. I think that's sort of orographic heating. So what the reason for that? You can see this area of very warm air that's that appears to come out of nowhere on the east coast of Greenland. And I think that's orographic heating, or it's also called the Foehn effect. Basically, what happens with that is that you get moist air that's forced to lift over the mountains, which Greenland, of course, is very mountainous, and the precipitation drops out, so the air dries as it moves up. But because you might be aware that the lapse rate, so the high, relationship between temperature and height, how cold it gets as you go up, for wet air, the temperature decreases slower than for dry air. So for dry air, the temperature goes down a lot faster as you go further up. So what happens is that the temperature drops a little bit as you go up, but because the air is quite moist, it doesn't drop that much. And then when it comes back down again, because the air is dry, it can warm up, but it warms up so much faster now because it's dry. So it warms up to be much warmer than it originally was. So hence this pocket of warm air that comes off. So in case anyone's interested in what causes a pocket of warm air to seemingly come out of nowhere, orographic heating. There you go. That's
a great explanation.
Yeah, but you sometimes see that, and it can be irritating because then this warm air sort of comes towards the UK. Again, we've got really good synoptics, but a complete lack of cold air. Yeah, don't really know what to say about that. Yeah,
we've run where we've got to day 10, so still more or less in a blocked pattern, although it is beginning to slip a little bit. But again, in this sort of pattern, that's a very, very long way out anyway. So up to day 10, it certainly looks like we're keeping things quite cold, but not severely cold, not very cold. But it looks like we're going to keep things seasonably chilly with some wintry potential. To day 10 anyway, that's quite a decent cold run, really, especially after the warmth that we've had in the last few years. The warm winters, I should say, in the last few years.
So what I'm doing here is, and this is a great new website where we can actually do this. So you'll be aware that the ECM has a bunch of ensemble members, which are run with slightly different starting conditions. So we can have a look at 50 different forecasts for the 10-day period. So I've set it on 10 days, and what we've got here is what we've just seen, with the sort of block starting to collapse. But any one individual run is not important. What's important is the sum total. So what I'm going to do is just quickly run through these, and these are all scenarios that could happen in 10 days. So what you want to try and do is form a picture of all these possible scenarios and think of the different patterns. I mean, I'm seeing quite a few northerly patterns here.
Yeah, it looks like there's quite a few ensemble members that are keeping things pretty cold up to day 10.
See, that one's a northeasterly, that one's Scandinavian easterly.
That one's building a ridge to Scandinavia.
That one's not very good, though.
That one's Atlantic. That one a little bit too. That one's
northerly. That one's cold. Got a channel low there. That one's very cold, isn't it? Another northerly. Northeasterly there. Northern northerly.
Looks like there's plenty of interest within the ensembles anyway.
That one's Atlantic.
I was on this website the other day for a video, and really, really good website. Weather.us.
This one's a really impressive northerly, isn't it? Northeasterly from sort of Scandinavia. Another northerly. And well, that one's kind of a northerly, not a very good one. Another northerly.
That one's good.
That's an easterly, that one. I doubt there'll be much cold air in that, though.
No, probably not.
But it's still an easterly. That one's cold as well. Northern blocking. That one's pretty poor. That one's a northerly. Well, northeasterly. That one's pretty much a northerly. That one's an easterly.
There are a lot of cold options on the table there, I think.
There's a southwesterly. I mean, there's been one or two southwesterlies, but there's another one. 2 in a row there. Southeasterly there. There's a really good northerly.
That's a good one.
Wow, that's a pretty poor one. But it looks like that one could turn into a northerly. That one's a pretty poor one. There's a northwesterly. Yeah. There's another good one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I don't really know what to say about that one. That's bizarre, that is, isn't it?
That's just one of those strange ones that you can get sometimes.
Yeah, you'd bin that one, wouldn't you?
That's blocking.
Yeah, that's good. That's a northerly, isn't it? Just about.
Just about, yeah. Northwesterly. That one's anticyclonic.
That one's too. I mean, the picture I'm starting to form here is that there are a few that show southwesterlies, but there aren't many.
And you would always expect those anyway, because, as I say, the models will always try to get back to the default pattern, which is west-southwesterly. So they will always, yeah. So in any block scenario, by day 10, you will always see options to get back to the default pattern. So the fact we've got so many ensemble members there that are still northerly, or in some cases easterly at day 10, that's probably quite an encouraging sign to suggest it's going to be a fairly extended spell of cold weather.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the current synoptics that we're seeing have been the best shown on the models in years. I haven't seen such an extended cold snap on the models being shown. I don't know, perhaps since sort of March 2013 when we had that.
Yeah, I think you've got to go back to 2013. Such a long run of cold synoptics. It's just a pity that the cold isn't the actual cold temperatures and the air isn't as cold as it could be given the synoptics. But I keep saying you have to take what you're given, and compared to the past 3 winters, I think we're doing quite well, really.
It's almost like coming last in Sports Day and then being given the participation award for 10 out of 10 effort. Because the synoptics are you can't really ask for better synoptics, certainly on a northerly, but there's just no cold air at all. I keep having to remind myself though that it is literally November, so
no cold comparatively speaking, but it will be cold. So
yeah. Oh yeah, I mean it's still going to be cold enough for snow. It's just not going to be cold enough for
no December to remember.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a shame, really, but I mean, it's certainly better than what we were getting last year with the endless southwesterlies.
And of course, if it's a foretaste of what might happen through the rest of the winter, if these northerly and block conditions were to keep coming back, sometimes a blocking pattern, when it starts, it can keep repeating. So if that was to happen, and of course, there's got to be a big question mark about that, because as I explained with the question earlier on, it could always go horribly wrong in our country at any time. We're always on that knife edge between being cold and blocked and being wet and zonal. So it could go horribly wrong at any point. But if we was to get the blocking pattern repeating later in the winter, then it does start to get very interesting, I would have thought.
I would definitely agree with that. And there's certainly no sign in any of the models that we're going to see anything but a very blocked pattern with high pressure over Greenland, which is, and the key thing is that it's not just a surface high pressure, you know, it's an upper level high as well. That 552 line is over Greenland, and that's important. This
is a real deal high pressure. It's not a faux high pressure. It's a proper block. I mean, then there's I mean, if we have a quick look at the geopotential height here, I mean, let's say at about 192. I mean, the polar vortex is
sort of on the other side of the Arctic. I mean, we had, I think part of the problem was that over the last few years, there's been a lot of talk of stratospheric warmings and the polar vortex being broken up and that sort of thing. But what's always tended to happen is that it's broken up, but the bit of polar vortex that's been left has been on our side of the Arctic. Right. Yeah.
So as I always say about stratospheric warmings and the blocking that you get afterwards, that's only part of the story. It's always the critical factor really is, well, it's two critical factors. The first critical factor is to get the stratospheric warming and the blocking, so that's okay. But the second critical factor is where the blocking is sitting, because if there's somewhere that's on the cold side of the block, there'll be somewhere else that is on the mild side of the block. So it certainly isn't a guarantee.
And you can see here on the Northern Hemisphere charts that the polar vortex is strongest or furthest away from us. So this is quite good. In the Atlantic, there's no real activity. And a quiet Atlantic is what we really need for cold weather.
That's right.
The pattern is fantastic. You couldn't ask for a better pattern. So what I thought we might do now is have another segment for questions and answers, and then maybe do a final segment where we look at the long range stuff.
Okay, so I'll zip over to Gav's Weather Vids and see what questions we've had over on Gav's Weather Vids. So we've had a question from Cyrum, I think. Hello, Gavin Quantum. Regarding winter forecast, can you rank the importance of various factors such as ENSO, QBO, solar activity, Siberian snow cover, etc. And also the importance of analogs. So I would say it's very difficult to rank those in importance, actually. So and it will vary in the year. So, for example, ENSO this year probably isn't all that important, actually. But in 2015-16, when we had the monster El Nino, but of course ENSO was a much more important factor. I think the QBO this year, the EC QBO, is probably one of the more important factors in reducing the zone of Westies. Possibly solar activity is a little bit more important this year as we're heading down into so minimum. Siberian snow cover, that's one of those tricky ones, really. I don't factor that all that. I mean, I do factor it into the forecast, but I don't put all that much emphasis on how quickly Siberian snow cover advances across.
That's how you end up with the October pattern index.
That ties into that a little bit, and that crash can burn. So the problem with that is that they was using it on its own as a single sort of forecasting tool, and you just can't do that. So I hope that answers that question. Richard has asked, with the stratospheric cooling going right now in the North Pole, I'm quite surprised that the models are showing these cold charts. Usually when the polar vortex is strong, westerlies tend to take over. So again, we've seen that the polar vortex is there, but it's over on the other side of the Arctic, which is lucky for us, being on the cold side of the polar vortex at the moment. And as I think possibly the active hurricane season that we have this year might be one of the reasons that the troposphere, the blocking the troposphere, is at odds with the cold temperatures that we have in the stratosphere. I'll see where we've had any more questions. So Matthew,
there is actually a suggestion towards the end of the GFS one that we might see a little bit of a stratospheric warming. I won't call this a stratospheric warming, but
yeah, that's been sort of appearing quite regularly. That is quite interesting that it's doing that. Certainly not a sudden stratospheric warming. For that, on these charts, you have to go to the red colours, but it's a modest sort of warming, and it's quite early to be seeing that. So it may be a sign that when we get through to January, we might see something a bit more significant in terms of the stratospheric warming, perhaps.
But I mean, ultimately, we live in the troposphere, so the tropospheric pattern is going to be more important than the stratospheric pattern anyway.
That's right. We're doing fine without it at the moment, anyway. So it might be, if we do get a sudden stratospheric warming, it could be one of those situations where kind of like it actually goes against us a little bit. It might take the blocking off somewhere else in the Arctic, and we might find ourselves going on to the mild side the blocking even. Matthew has asked, how long do you believe this particular blocking setup will last, given the current model output? So what I'd say to Matthew about that is that certainly we've got evidence that it's going up to day 10, and that's as far as we can go. Well, it's way beyond where we can go reliably. So certainly the first week of December, you would say, is looking quite cold. Beyond that, it's going to be difficult to sustain it. And I know that a lot of the longer range output is trying to bring milder conditions back for the middle of December and sort of the run up towards Christmas. And that may be what happens. But as we saw in 2010 and also March 2013, sometimes blocking can just run and run and run. So you never know. You never know entirely how long it's got to go. But what you can say is certainly the next week to 10 days is looking quite cold.
You can sometimes get the situation where when the blocking decays over Greenland, it goes to Scandinavia, and you get an easterly, and then then you get something that tries to push away the blocking from Scandinavia, and then it goes back to Greenland, and then it sort of oscillates between the two. And actually, the ECM ensemble members, which we looked at 5 or 10 minutes ago, that showed a lot of easterly members with the Scandinavian highs. So if something like that happens, we could potentially see this going on for weeks, if not maybe longer. It's just a potential. It doesn't mean it will.
That's right. And of course, you can, as I explained, you can get into a repeating pattern. Ollie has pointed out that you can't, excuse me, you can't expect snow in November, particularly. I'd say the earliest you can expect it is beyond Christmas. But excuse me, again, it does depend, Ollie, on the synoptics. So the point we're making is that the depth of cold could have been greater than the northerly, than we've got with this northerly, if you like. And if it had been, then this would have been more on the December 2010 type situation than we've got this year, purely because of the sustainability of the blocking. Chris is asking, or saying, Quantum, I love the way you are calling this a show. Does that mean we can expect further shows like tonight from both of you?
We've done well. This is our sixth one.
This is our sixth one, isn't it? So the first one for over a year, though. So the thing that people don't realise that it's very difficult for us to get our schedules together, but we certainly love doing them, and we'd like to do more, I'm sure. Rob has said, asked Gavin, with the recent mild winters, does the ground get warmer, so has an effect of latent heat scuppering any chance of snow lying? And I'd say welcome to Gav's Service, Rob, because I think Rob's a new poster at Gav's Service. I wouldn't think that makes a great deal of difference, really. If we was to get into a pattern that was cold enough, very quickly the ground will cool down. So probably at this time of year, it does make a little bit of a difference, not because of the past mild winters, actually, but probably just because we're coming out of summer and autumn. So the ground, obviously, is going to be warmer now, but it will be in February or March. But as we saw in 2010, if we get it cold enough and snowy enough, then the snow is certainly the snow is certainly going to lie quite quickly. It just depends how cold and snowy we can get it.
The ground does cool down quite quick.
It will cool down very quickly.
The situation where that sort of thing matters is when you get maybe 2 days of a relatively benign northerly, followed by some kind of frontal feature that moves into the cold air, and it doesn't settle because the ground's too warm. But we're not going to see that sort of thing, because what we're going to see is at least 3 or 4 days of. Even when it turns a bit milder on Monday, it's not going to turn mild. So it's not going to be. The ground temperature is not going to warm up significantly on Monday, because it's going to be 6, 7, 8 degrees as opposed to 3 or 4 degrees. So it's not going to make a huge difference. That sort of situation really only applies when you're talking about a relatively short cold snap, and this is going to be sustained. So I don't think we have to worry about ground temperatures preventing snow from settling. What we do have to worry about is a lack of embedded cold air in the air mass itself,
and just how much snow there is.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of that. Julie Burberry, another new poster at Gav's Office for our live stream, has posted, and welcome to Gav's Office, Julie, to say, I've been an avid watcher reader of the site for a while now, just learning the lingo. So can someone explain in simple terms if any of this cold coming can produce snow for us southerners, please? It's a very rare thing here now, and I love it. So, Julie, as we've already explained, certainly for the north, there is going to be a risk of snow, and for the south, not that much of a risk of anything wintry until potentially maybe later next week. And there was just a suggestion from the GFS that sort of Thursday, Friday might do something a little bit more widespread for the south. It is going to be a sustained northerly, though, if it was to start getting colder. Due to the sustainability of the northerly, I suppose that's what happens to some degree by Thursday and Friday next week, then the longer it goes on, the greater the chance of something wintry happening. So I think that covers all the questions for Gav's weather vids so far.
There's plenty on the, I think there's a few on Twitter as well, but there's a few on the YouTube chat. So how does the QBO actually work? I know the simple explanation, but want to know more. I mean, I don't really know anything about the QBO. If you want to take that one.
It reduces the zonal flow. When the QBO is westerly, you enhance the zonal flow through the tropics of the Earth primarily. So it reduces the zonal flow when you go into the easterly QBO, strengthens the zonal flow when you go into the westerly QBO. And beyond that, it's a little bit hard to explain it really for a live feed. Maybe something that I would need to do a video on its own about, perhaps. So I think we've got to crack on with some more questions. But essentially, the easterly QBO will weaken your zonal westerlies. The westerly QBO will strengthen them. Just another question popped up at Gav's Office. Ron has asked, Gavin, may I ask how much low solar activity how much low solar activity do you think is playing a part in the current cold conditions? So what I would say to Ron is that you can never say that one particular weather event is being caused completely by a single driver. So in this example, in solar activity. But we do know that the lower we go with solar activity, the closer we get to solar minimum, the greater the risk of blocking. So we can't say for definite that this particular episode of blocking is down to low solar activity, but it is possible that this episode of low solar activity has some connection. This cold weather has some connection to the low levels of solar activity. Richard has said, hi, Gavin and Hugh, from my personal research, you can get colder winters this side of solar minimum. 1963 is an example of that, although I tend to favour a colder winter starting in January 2018. My question this time is to Quantum, as I don't want to open Gavin's winter forecast yet. What does Quantum think will happen for the winter of 2017-18?
I've been following the Atlantic hurricane season with significant interest, and there's been a lot of interesting storms like Hurricane Ophelia, which has been very far to the north, and I do think that an active hurricane season does bode quite well, because you tend to sort of cool down the waters in the subtropics, which is quite important because it reduces the temperature contrast, which means that these lows that come off the eastern seaboard struggle to develop, which means that you get a weaker jet stream. Doesn't guarantee anything, but I would say that the odds are more in our favour this year of seeing a cold winter.
I think so, and I have a feeling this active hurricane season that we've had could well be, at least, again, you never say 100% that one particular driver is the total effect or the total cause of another driver, but I would say that the active hurricane season that we have this year might be one of the reasons that the troposphere, where we've got the blocking, is out of sync with the stratosphere, which is quite significantly now colder than average. On Twitter, I've gone over to Gazov's Twitter page. Matthew Bradshaw is saying that low solar activity seems to give a pressure pattern circulation change. High pressure goes up into and around the Arctic, and it's fascinating. It seems the lunar cycle has a pull on the Earth and can give more earthquakes and volcanoes. So I'm just scrolling down to see whether we've had any questions. Alan is asking, hi Gav, I would like to know if this winter could be anything like winter 62, 63 or 78, 79. So, Alan, you can never say never with the weather. So we saw in 2010, we had our coldest December since 1890. And I think March 2013 was the coldest since 1883. So you never say never. But it's very, very unlikely that we would get a winter of as cold as 62, 63. We are in a significantly warmer climate overall compared to climate we was in the 1960s, as we're seeing with this northerly. We have great stock ticks, but we don't have the depth of severe cold that we might have expected with such a strong northerly flow and such a long-lasting northerly flow. So I would say a 62, 63 winter is very, very unlikely, very remote. But with the caveat that with the weather, you can never say never. And scrolling down a bit more,
there's a few more on the YouTube chat. Informative Al wants to know. Oh, actually, sorry, I've missed out. Did I tell you the question from Zork, which is what's the reason behind all this blocking, given that we've had a cold and average stratosphere? I mean, we were talking about the stratosphere and how it's not the be all and end all, and how obviously we do live in the troposphere. So that's
right. And
I mean, I think the stratosphere is more a case of, if you get warming in the stratosphere, their pattern can sometimes propagate down, and also the troposphere and the stratosphere are sometimes coupled, in that what happens in one sometimes happens in the other. So what's happening now in the troposphere could propagate up into the stratosphere. So there's a genuine possibility that we could see stratospheric warming that's actually been caused by the blocking up in the troposphere. But that's not going to matter to us because we live in the troposphere. So.
That's right. You never say what it's like a chicken and an egg scenario. So you can never say whether the warming comes from under or from above. So I'm just
of course we've had the complete opposite as well. We've had a sudden stratospheric warming and it's still been mild and
and it doesn't have any effect on the troposphere.
Yeah.
So you're just scrolling through a bit more. Have you got any more questions on YouTube?
Here we go. Toasted Tom. Oh, hang on. Did I ask? Informative L wants to know which place should I move to in order to get snow frequently in northern England, please. And we've been talking about the shower potential being mostly at mostly to start off with near the western coasts for the next few days. Maybe more generally end of next week. But basically, the further north, the better. And also, you don't really want to be too far inland.
And if you're talking about over a sustained time frame, then move out of the UK and go somewhere in Northern Europe or North America.
But somewhere like Aberdeen, I mean, they're going to get settled snow regardless. I mean, if they've not already had it today or tonight, you know. Tom wants to know what's the chance of us getting an easterly wind. As I remember correctly, that's best chance of snow. Well, in the southeast, he puts in brackets. That's true to a degree because easterly winds are one of those double-edged swords. They are, if you get a northerly wind, you're pretty much going to guarantee cold. There's no such thing as a warm northerly. I mean, we're definitely trying to have a warm northerly at the moment, but even then, you know, there's no such thing as a truly warm northerly. But easterlies are a lot more fickle. If the air mass is slightly wrong, if it comes from Southeast Europe rather than Siberia, then things can be sort of very, very disappointing. I've remembered a lot of easterly winds over the last 5 or 6 years, and I'd say probably only about half of them were interesting easterlies. The other half were sort of still cold, but unimpressively cold, you know, grey, drizzly, that sort of thing.
It very much depends what depth of cold you've got over the continent to be brought in on the wind.
Exactly. I mean, to answer your question, there's a genuinely good chance of an easterly based on the ensemble ECM and several members to develop in maybe 10, 20 days down the line. I could definitely see there being an easterly in a couple of weeks' time. But then for snow in the southeast, is that easterly going to be a particularly cold one? Honestly, probably not, because there's just not really that much cold air around. That's the truth of it. We're relatively early in the winter.
What you do find with the continent is that it can get cold, really cold, very, very quickly. It's surprising how that can happen. Within sort of a few days, it can go from being relatively mild to being really locked into the freezer in a continental climate. So
it definitely can do. I mean, that happened in 1981 or something, where we had that severe January cold.
87.
Yeah, and it wasn't just how impressively it cooled down. I mean, it was in a matter of days that it suddenly went cold, but it warmed up as well. So the easterly wind never really stopped, but it became a warm easterly. So the opposite can also happen at the easterly. I mean, that also happened in 2005 when there was that easterly at the end of February, and it was cold and snowy for about a week. But then the easterly didn't really stop. It just picked up a little bit of warmer air from Southeast Europe, and the snow turned to rain. So the opposite can happen as well.
If it starts picking a feed up out of the Mediterranean, then it will, even if the easterly persists, it will become significantly warmer.
I think the general answer to this question is that there's a good chance. I mean, easterlies are really quite rare, but there's a pretty good chance of us getting one in the next month, given the synoptics. But I would not bet on the easterly being deep cold easterly. It could be, but I won't bet on that.
Never say never with the weather.
Exactly.
So Severe Weather World is asking on Twitter, what's the snow risk looking like for Kent this coming week? So I think we've answered that. Really not tremendously good. There might be something a little bit more happening in terms of widespread wintry conditions late next week, but it's too far away to have any certainty about. And then Matt Hallifan is asking quite an interesting question. So he says, my wife says weather forecasters have no responsibility as they get paid whether they're correct or not. There is no consequence for bad forecasts. So it's the best job in the world. Thoughts? So
I mean, we're going to be a big politics into this, but if you're something like regardless of whether you're a private forecaster or the Metalverse, your credibility matters, right? I mean, if you produce bad forecasts, people aren't going to take you seriously. And I know people don't. I mean, I know weather forecasters get a lot of stick anyway, because they might get it right 80% of the time, but then there's always that 20% where they get it badly wrong. But I think credibility matters, and there are certain examples of weather forecasters that, and I will not name any names, but you will know if you know who I'm referring to. You will know that there are certain examples of forecasters that do not have any credibility at all because they keep forecasting overly extreme events that just never happen, and the result of that is that no one takes them seriously and no one sort of listens to them. So I mean, the general point is that it's not like forecasters have nothing to lose. That credibility is definitely valued.
That's right, and you do find yourself under a lot of scrutiny, particularly if you forecast cold conditions. And I suppose it's same in summer as well. If you forecast hot summer weather and that doesn't materialize, then you do find yourself under quite a bit of scrutiny. And of course, if you get lots of forecasts going down the tubes, then as Quantum has explained, you will find that your credibility gradually starts to decline. And I think that's the position we're in with certain unnamed forecasters at the moment. And I haven't better say any more about that, or else I'll get myself into trouble. Morgan is asking, why do models seem to struggle with so much with pesky shortwaves? That's a good question. What do you think, Quantum? Why do models struggle with pesky shortwaves?
The high resolution models tend to be quite good, actually. I think it's just a resolution thing. I mean, your global models are not able to resolve the features very well. But if you're sort of forecasting from a day or two before the event, your short-term models can do very well. So this possible event on Thursday that I'm maybe still quite skeptical of. We'll have to see what happens. The best thing to do there is look at your short-term models, look at your Wharf, look at your Rome, look at your RPG. We've actually got a new model now that I want to that I've been reminded about this. So I'll quickly put the screen share to show you this new one, called the Icon EU, and I think this is a German model. And the really cool thing about this model is that you'll know that the GFS updates 4 times a day. Well, now we have a model that updates 8 times a day.
8 times a day?
8 times a day, yeah, I'm being serious. So we actually have a 15Z run, an 18Z run, a 21Z run, a 0Z, a 3Z, a 6Z, a 9Z. I can't believe it.
I'll be collapsing in a heap.
Well, I mean, this is going to be, it's the sort of, for an amateur forecaster, it's going to increase the OCD quite a lot, isn't it? Because now we've got a model that updates 8 times a day. Yeah, and actually, the 15Z has just started running. That's the thing now.
I think that would be a bit too much to me. I think I'll find myself collapsing in a dark room in a heap with 8 updates a day. Dear.
Well, the 15Z is. I mean, actually looking at this doesn't look like a particularly. It's not forecasting any snow at all. So, well, we'll have to see how it performs on frontal stuff. It doesn't look like it's doing too well on. Yeah, it's not really forecasting any snow at all. And the showers on.
Over on Facebook, Ulif is asking, what is the chance of a cold winter in Denmark? So a bit of international forecasting. With that, well, I suspect we have a slightly greater chance. I don't want to say too much again because of the winter forecast in a week's time, so don't want to give too much away. But with the QBO being easterly, going into a low phase of solar activity, the active hurricane season that we've seen this year, I suspect we have a slightly greater chance of a colder winter for the UK. If we have a slightly greater chance of a colder winter for the UK, then you will think much of Europe, particularly northern parts of Europe, also have a greater chance of a colder winter. And of course, there it's a colder climate anyway. So probably your chance of a cold winter in Denmark is certainly better than it has been for a few years, perhaps. I think that exhausts all of the social media side of things. And Gaz, have you got any more questions, Quantum?
Sorry, I started talking with the microphone turned off. Why do you always refer to less cold air as milder air? I'm interested in that. Why don't we just use less cold or temperatures increasing or something like that? I honestly don't know where the nomenclature comes from, but my guess would be that mild in the sense of if you live in a cold country, cold not just snow, but cold can be a legitimate danger. You know, if your skin is exposed to a significant wind chill, that could actually be dangerous to human health. So I suspect where mild comes from is on a spectrum from mild, moderate, severe, very severe. In terms of talking about cold, so mild would be low chance of health risk, moderate would be a moderate chance, severe would be severe, and so on. And they use this in hot climates as well. So in a hot climate, you would also say mild. Let's say if the temperature's below 30 degrees, you might say mild. If the temperature is above 40 degrees, you might say severe. So I don't know, but if I had to guess, that would be my guess.
That sounds like a good answer.
There's another question from Kieran. I think, just flicked past it. Gav, I know there isn't one this year, but can you explain the significance of the tripole like the one we had in 2010? Does lack of tripole rule out a severe winter?
It doesn't rule anything out. So with the weather, there's never a guarantee, and there's never a promise. So the lack of a tripole this year, and that is a freeway band of warmer than average temperature anomalies close to Greenland, and then colder than average close temperature anomalies through the central part of the Atlantic Ocean, and then warmer than average temperature anomalies again through the tropical Atlantic. These are sea surface temperature anomalies, of course. So the lack of that this year is one of the things that suggests that we aren't particularly well set up with the Atlantic in terms of getting a negative NAO. This is a UK Met Office idea, by the way. They were the ones that perfected this. So you look for the tripole to suggest the chance of a negative NAO. But in any case, not having the tripole does not rule out the chance of the cold winter, just as if we had a tripole, it wouldn't guarantee a cold winter. We had a tripole in the winter of 2005, 2006, and that wasn't a particularly cold winter. It's one of those winters that nearly became cold, but it just didn't quite come together. Conversely, we had a tripole for the winter of 95, 96. Now, that was a genuinely cold winter. So a tripole, it increases your chance of getting a negative NAO, but it's not the only factor. And I say there's never a promise with weather, particularly with the UK's weather in winter. There's never a promise of cold weather. But by the same token, it doesn't take it off the table if you don't have it either. There are other factors that are important.
So just looking at the comments again, there's another one on when exactly do you need the QBO to start an easterly in order to be sure that you're going to have an easterly QBO winter?
You want it to be a relatively mature QBO, which we've got this year. So, I mean, you can get situations where the QBO will start to transition easterly, sort of November, December, and that's probably too late really to have much impact on the winter that you're going into. But we transitioned into the easterly QBO several months ago, so we've got no worries with that.
Will Newcastle upon Tyne see any snow in the next 7 days? Well, we touched on this in the second segment when we were looking at regional. The problem with Newcastle is that it's quite far east, isn't it? And at the moment, the wind has this westerly component, so Newcastle's going to struggle to see any of these showers. I mean, that you definitely can't rule it out, especially since it is still quite close to the coast, the east coast, that is. Of seeing some showers trickling down the east coast as well, but I would suspect that for somewhere like Newcastle, the probability of seeing snowfall becomes a lot higher towards the end of next week when we get that more northerly wind. And I would say there's probably a greater than even odds of snow in Newcastle at some point this week, probably getting on for 70%, 80%. Would you say that?
I reckon so, yeah.
I mean, that's of any snow at all. I wouldn't want to bet on there being significant snow, but there still might be if there's some kind of feature embedded.
Especially as it's such a sustained northerly wind. Over on Gaz, Tom Mason is asking, with the change in industrial pollution and the Clean Air Act kicking in all across Europe, USSR and USA in the early 1980s, do you think this has modified the general weather regime across the Northern Hemisphere? Certainly there seems to be less fog compared to say the 1950s, 1960s. And Tom, I would say that definitely in terms of fog, even in my lifetime, I've seen a great reduction in the number of days that are foggy now compared to the number of days of fog that you used to get sort of in the 1980s and the 1990s. I can remember some, not smog, so I wasn't born that long ago, but I can certainly remember some very, very thick and long-lasting fog days through the 1980s and 1990s. And these do seem, certainly in my neck of the woods, they do seem to be much less. I'm sure that has had an effect on the amount of fog that we get in the UK at the moment.
One thing I do seem to remember, I couldn't tell you which year this was. I'm guessing sometime maybe in the early 2000s. There was a quite odd instance of a snow shower forming over Cardiff city centre, where I think it was Cardiff. It could have been. So I seem to remember it was Cardiff, where the plumes from the industrial works generated some convection, and this tiny little heavy snow shower dropped a little bit of snow over Cardiff. So, yeah,
I can't remember that. When say that was in the early 2000s?
I think it was sometime in the early 2000s. I'm not even sure if it was Cardiff, but it was some. Yeah, and you don't see this very often. You do see there is something called industrial snow, where you see a few sort of flurries of snow that are generated by these convective plumes from the warm islands that exist. But Yeah, there was this genuinely heavy snow shower that was actually formed purely out of from these thermals from industrial works, and I can't remember exactly when it happened. You can probably find it in BBC News archives at some point, but I think it was the early 2000s. It didn't last for very long. It was just for half an hour or something, but it dropped like half an inch of snow, and it was
All right.
Otherwise dry across the UK. So
Jake is saying, stop the press. It's snowing in Grimsby. Congratulations for getting some snow in Grimsby, Jake. And I think that's all the comments on Gaz. Well, there's one final comment from Mark on Facebook. Gavin, just a quick question to mention. You can get snow even in a mild winter. Is that right? Yes, that's right. You can certainly get snow even in a mild winter. I can remember several very mild winters, and they did have at least brief periods of snow. So a mild winter does not in any way say that you won't get any snow. It just means your snow will be relatively low risk, and it probably won't last all that long because you'll be quite quickly finding yourself going back into the overall mild pattern, which will melt it all away. But certainly in any mild winter, you can get snow at any point in that winter.
This radar doesn't always get it right, does it? It does mostly get it right, but it's showing rain in Grimsby. But yeah, I'd say it's about 80% accurate, but occasionally it does get it wrong. But yeah, you can see that there are these wintry showers over Yorkshire.
They are moving down, aren't they? And they are heading increasingly.
And I know that there was definitely snow in Leeds this afternoon. Yeah,
I've seen reports of snow across northern England, and
it's a mixture, isn't it? A mixture of rain, sleet, and snow across. Yeah.
Wintry mix, and they are heading increasingly into the North Midlands as well now. But
when that wind goes into the northwest, and we start getting these showers in the Cheshire Gap. So if we just look at sort of like Stoke-on-Trent, we'll probably see snow. We'll probably see snow in Birmingham tonight. I'd be surprised if Birmingham doesn't see a few flakes of snow. Derby, maybe, I don't know, Nottingham's a little bit far east, isn't it? Coventry, Leamington Spa, Worcestershire, Shrewsbury, Wrexham. Probably not Liverpool because it's so close to the coast, but maybe the higher parts of Liverpool. These sorts of
Northamptonshire.
Where's that then? Oh, down here. Mate, I don't know. I mean, it depends how far these showers get inland. Maybe if
we don't do very good, really. Well, we can get down the Cheshire Gap a little bit in this area.
I think definitely these showers are going to get further inland to tonight. And like I said, the showers will pep up during the night. So definitely Northern Ireland is going to see a covering of snow tonight. If anyone lives in Northern Ireland, there's sort of a lot of showers here.
That looks really good, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, some sustained snow now in the northern of Scotland as well. Yeah.
On Twitter, Bruno is asking about Portugal. Still very dry in Portugal. Any perspective on what might happen there? So I didn't really look at Iberia when we went through the models a few minutes ago, but excuse me, I suppose in the blocking pattern, we can expect to find that southern Europe might turn wetter. You start getting areas of low pressure beginning to track to the south of the block, and that's something that can happen. Then we might find wetter conditions developing across Iberia, across Spain and Portugal. So I didn't really see what was going on there when we went through the models, but certainly if we was to go into a sustained blocking pattern, I would have thought many parts of the southern Europe, Mediterranean, and including Spain and Portugal could be in line for some much needed rain, perhaps.
I've got a point here talking about that line of precipitation on the radar that's heading towards Wales, and was it forecast? I think the WRF model actually did forecast a line of showers. I think we looked at that earlier. So I think the WRF did pretty well out of this. Maybe the other models not so well.
I think from how it looks now, those other higher res models that weren't really showing much going on, they might have they might be downplaying things a little bit too much. It does look as though things are quite active at the moment to the north and the west.
The WRF definitely looked more realistic. I mean, actually, if the WRF is right, we would expect to see quite a bit more snow in sort of the West Midlands tonight. I mean, the other models have definitely underplayed it. So I don't know why the other models have been so poor. They usually like the Heerlam is notable for exaggerating the amount of snow in any given situation. So I'm surprised that it wasn't interested in that today. So, but I would tend to trust the 2 kilometer Wharf. It's a very good model. So.
Andy is asking, what do you think about the link between solar activity and its effects on the jet stream? So it's not understood why, when we go into periods of low solar activity, particularly around solar minimum, why we get this increased chance of blocking. It's particularly the case for the Atlantic and Northern Europe. I'm not sure it's less, I'm not sure it's as much the case for other parts of the Northern Hemisphere. And I suspect there is an effect that happens with low solar activity on the jet stream, probably through the energy that's being emitted via the sun. But quite what that connection is, I don't think many people really understand that, to be honest. So we know there is a connection. We've seen it time and again. But the mechanism by which that happens, I'm not sure that's greatly well understood.
There's a question about why does the level of sea level matter when it's winter? I know about the temperatures. Are there any other reasons? I mean, actually, the temperature is the main reason. Of course, it's colder the further up you go, unless you're in an inversion, of course. But snow doesn't happen in inversions. Are there any other reasons? Or the main other reason why you want to be on higher ground is because you get this orographic lift. So the showers tend to be heavier on higher ground. So I mean, we know about the effect of the rain shadow, where you get a lot of precipitation dumped over the hills and then it's dry on the other side. So mountainous terrain tends to enhance the showers. Certainly over the mountains. I mean, it has the opposite effect for places that are on the other side. So. That's another reason that the showers tend to be heavier, and heavier showers mean they're also more likely to fall as snow.
Yeah, that's right. So Nigel is asking, hi Gavin, can you answer my question with Q about whether snowless winters will become the norm in the future as a result of the warmer climate here in the south of England, and so we'll have more winters like had in 13, 14. And of course, we're opening a little bit of a can of worms with that. But I think the evidence is clear that we are heading into a warmer overall climate. And now this doesn't preclude the chance of getting cold and snowy periods at any point. But overall, incrementally, gradually, slowly over the years and decades, we are moving into a warmer climate. And so I would say that, yes, I suppose as we go deeper into this century, we will find the risk of colder and snowy winters reducing, but that is the risk reducing. It doesn't mean that we won't ever get cold and snowy winters. And I would suspect even by the middle of this decade, we will probably still be getting at times, but a reduced frequency periods of cold and wintry conditions.
John Whirl is asking a question that would be befitting of an undergraduate meteorology class. If low pressure is caused by warm air rising and high pressure caused by cool air sinking, why is high pressure so dominant in northern climates? So why is low pressure so dominant in northern climates and high pressure so dominant near the tropics? Because I suppose it does sound counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Like I say, the answer to this question, there's an entire lecture series on the answer. So, it's quite difficult to.
We will probably be here until 2 o'clock in the morning.
I mean there are literally undergraduate meteorology modules that could be based on that question. I'll try and summarize the points. There are actually both. You can get high pressures that are cold. You can get high pressures that are warm. You can get low pressures that are cold and low pressures that are warm. They're referred, in terms of low pressure, they're referred to as cold core lows and warm core lows. So a hurricane is an example of a warm core low. There's a lot of warm air at the surface in a hurricane, colder air further up, and lows that form sort of in the northern latitudes, like even the polar vortex, it would be described as a cold core low because it's caused by cold air in the upper atmosphere. The reality of this question is that there are lots of mechanisms that happen to form low and high pressure, and one of them is the generation of a heat low. So you get, for example, over the Iberian Peninsula, you might get warm air in the summer that heats up the land, and that causes warm air to rise in the surrounding cool air, and then the pressure gets low at the surface. That would be described as a heat low. But there are loads of mechanisms for forming low pressures, and in the mid latitudes, low pressure is mostly caused by temperature gradients, so warm air interacting with cold air, and the cold air goes underneath the warm air, and the warm air is forced to rise. And what causes low pressure tends to not be what's happening at the surface, because you have to, because pressure is effectively the pressure's the force per unit area of the entire atmosphere. So you can't just look at the surface; you have to look at what's going on at the top of the atmosphere. So if air is being removed at the top of the atmosphere, then the pressure is being reduced because the column of air is becoming less heavy. So a lighter column of air means a lower pressure. So when low pressures deepen, even though air actually goes in towards the low pressure to try and restore the balance, what tends to be happening is that higher up, you tend to get air that's being removed. So the answer to this is quite complicated.
Definitely very complicated.
I've tried to summarize some of the key ideas here, but I will agree that is very counterintuitive, and it's not an easy question to answer at all. Yeah, like I say, you could have an entire lecture series on that, but I hope I've given some, I don't know, it's not really an answer. It's sort of areas that you might explore to try and find the answer. But like I honestly could not answer that question in 5 minutes. It's a difficult question. So
severe world weather is asking about line of precipitation on the radar heading the Midlands. Is it likely to reach Kent area in the night, guys? I don't think so. I think that the model suggested, the models we looked at the start of the live stream suggested that this doesn't really get much further eastwards than the Midlands. So I suspect even here in North Hampshire, I'm going to be struggling to get very much out of that line of precipitation. So I would have thought down in Kent, very unlikely that much of that will be getting through.
Okay, so do you want to maybe do a? I don't want to go on much longer than 2 hours, because that's going to be hard for people to watch after the fact. But maybe now, I'm not sure how much you want to do on this, but I would ideally like to do a little segment on long-term stuff, because that's what people are interested in as well. I know you've got your winter forecast to do, so you'll have to guide me on what exactly we're going to look at. But I've got your links page up, so you tell me what you want to look at.
Okay, so if we go to the links page,
I'll just get the screen share up. Screen shares.
I'm going to have my seasonal model roundup. We'll have 14 long-range models tomorrow, actually. So
okay, here's the. So now we're doing.
So if you scroll down the page to long-range models, we've got a list of long-range models that we can look at. So if we have a look at ECNWF Meteo France link. It's just become available in recent weeks, so this will be showing.
Didn't you? So which one do you want to look at?
We can look at the UK Met. It should be showing more options than that. Actually, I'm not sure why that's only showing a few options.
This is the. Hang on. We want. Oh, here we go. I think this is it. We want the geopotential height, right?
Yeah, I think we'll have a look at mean sea level pressure.
Mean sea level pressure.
That's our list of. Yeah, that's it.
So Met Office.
Yeah,
this is the anomaly. December, January, February.
Yeah, this going through a really strong zonal flow through the winter.
That's not good, is it? Not what you're listening.
That will be a winter to remember for all the wrong reasons. That will be a mild, wet, Atlantic-driven and zonal winter.
Call me a bit sceptical about that, though. Actually, it's not entirely bad, because we do have low pressure over Scandinavia as well, and it's not like it's concentrated over the Atlantic. It's over the whole of the Eurasian continent. So it's actually quite a bizarre pattern, that is.
And quite oddly, the Azores High doesn't look like it's especially strong either, which you would tend.
Actually, I think this could be a northwesterly pattern.
You would tend to expect a stronger Azores Ridge in a zonal winter, so that is a little bit odd as well.
It's not a classic pattern that at all, is it? It's
definitely going for a very unsettled winter.
It's not desperately mild though. I mean, that is not like the worst case scenario pattern, is it? Really? I mean,
the model itself is forecasting a very mild winter, but then these long range models always do. So I worry less about the temperature, precipitation anomalies really, and I tend to concentrate on the heights and the pressure. So yeah, that's an unsettled winter, but the absence of the Azores High is a little bit odd, given the below average pressure across the Atlantic and Northern Europe.
It says solid contour at 1% significance level. So what I tend to take from that is that wherever there's a solid contour, it's the uncertainty within that is relatively low, and you can see that the UK is not really in the solid contour, so it seems like it's going to be uncertain anyway.
That's right. I think there is quite a lot of uncertainty.
I mean, there's some sort of things that are. I mean, like for example, this area of high pressure here, which I actually would say is probably a bad thing for us, because if you get high pressure here, it means you tend to get low pressure here. But then actually, I suppose we could get high pressure here, low pressure here, high pressure here. I don't know. It's not showing that though, is it? So
no.
But I'd say, I mean, it's not a terrible pattern. It's just not it's not really great, is it either?
It's been a consistent signal from the UK Met Office GLOW-C5 model for unsettled winter, but as we say, it's a little bit of an odd one, because it's not sort of a strong ridge around the Azores as you would typically expect to see.
I always hate these difficult to use controls. And then we got February, March, April. Again, a lot of low pressure.
You're going through to late winter now. And that one's rather strange as well, because now it looks like the low pressure is more centered towards the south of Greenland, but there's still not really all that much of a ridge in the Atlantic. So around the Azores, there's still no real sign of an Azores High there. So rather strange.
What's geopotential height saying? Okay, that looks more like a zonal pattern now.
That does look rather zonal. Again,
we've got a situation where we've got positive geopotential height anomalies in Greenland, the Arctic, and so on. Yet we have negative surface pressure anomalies. That's weird, that is.
That's strange.
What does that mean? It signals a quite a weak polar vortex, though. The geopotential heights are above average.
I think
we don't want to be seeing low pressure over the Atlantic, though.
I think there's been some speculation recently that the geopotential heights and pressure generally is a little bit higher over the polar field and the Arctic because of the situation in terms of Arctic sea ice. And these models, I think they tend to show that. And you would look at that and think there's going to be lots of Arctic blocking, but it may not necessarily be the case that it's going to be quite as extensive as that is showing. But certainly that's a very odd-looking chart.
Yeah, I don't really know what to take from that. We've got positive geopotential anomalies in southern Europe, so that's almost like an Azores High, and we've also got northern blocking.
And you don't really see much sign of that with the mean sea level pressure anomaly.
This is. Let's have a look at the ECM. I don't. This is just nonsense. It really is. See if the ECM gives us anything sensible. I mean, this does look a lot more of a sensible anomaly, doesn't it?
So we're looking at February, March, April. We need to get the January.
That's a more sensible pattern, though. I can interpret that. It's not nonsense like the other one. I mean, this one is. It's not great. We've got an Azores High here.
It looks like its centre is pushed a little bit to the western portion of the Atlantic. So that's quite interesting, because when the Azores High goes down sort of Bermuda, that sort of area, then that could be quite a interesting position for us, because it can allow colder incursions.
Well, this one suggests to me that we've got quite an active Atlantic. I don't like the fact that we've got low pressures coming off Canada. That's always caused problems in the past few years. So that's not a good pattern. Quite a strong jet here. But then we've also got this Scandinavian high that seems to be interested in developing. So it seems to be one of those situations where you get a Scandinavian high that develops, but you also have quite an active Atlantic. So the UK tends to be in that boundary situation between the cold air to the east and the warm air to the west. And sometimes you can get quite impressive snow events from that. But most of the time, the UK is just about in the mild section.
That's right. It's certainly very conflicting signals that we've got going on here. That's
I could definitely see that it's mild, though. This is definitely a mild pattern, with a hint that the Scandinavian high may also play a part. Whereas the
shows the December, January, February. If we go back,
it's just toggling. I don't know how. So just December, January.
That's the one.
Okay, I mean that's
covering early winter.
Yeah.
And again, it looks
got Scandinavian high playing a role here, but also quite an active Atlantic.
Again, it looks Atlantic driven, although possibly with a little bit of southerly component to the jet stream. You have a look at mean sea level pressure for December, January, February. I think that implies the potential there. That chart just there, I think that implies a potential maybe for a little bit of a southerly component to the jet stream. And I suppose that's particularly through the early winter period we're in right now. So maybe this could imply that the coldest phase of winter might be early.
We've still got this idea of a Scandinavian high.
It still has that, doesn't it?
I would not be surprised if we did end up with an easterly, because even though we've got quite an active Atlantic, the Scandinavian high can still extend over the UK. But on the other hand, we might get a situation where we've got a Scandinavian high, but the Atlantic is just pushing through, and the cold air doesn't get. You know that situation where the cold air is like on the other half of the North Sea, but
that's right.
It's literally 100 miles away, but it can never get any further west.
Or the dreaded situation where it all piles down into Greece and Turkey.
Oh, yeah, that situation.
And you see those
that's happened a lot.
On the news of Athens being deluged with snow while we're bathed in 15 degrees.
Well, actually, this is the sort of pattern I would expect to see if that did happen. So maybe that's going to happen again.
It could do.
So January looks pretty bad.
January, February, March.
Still a suggestion that, I mean, it's white rather than yellow, but still a suggestion we might have some kind of Scandinavian high and then low pressure to the north. Maybe a southeasterly flow, possibly.
Possibly. And again, we see the Azores High seemingly being pushed off a little bit into the sort of western Atlantic, which is a bit at odds with the overall sort of zonal type situation around Iceland. So very strange model runs at the moment with these long range models.
That's a more traditional.
That's a more like it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that would be a pattern I do not want to see. You see that pattern, you know.
Although that's February, March, April, so it's going into spring. So I don't know.
Not really impressed by what I'm seeing in terms of prospects for a cold winter, but
no, and this has been the case with many of the long range models actually through this season. And that's a bit at odds with the sort of the drivers of the weather, kind of like the QBO and that kind of thing, that possibly suggests at least a greater chance of something a bit colder this winter, but the models really are having none of it, particularly the CFS-V2, but that's the one that all the sort of cold and snow lovers hate anyway, so we won't mention that.
Are there any other ones you want me to have a quick look at, or you don't have to? We can leave it.
I think we've probably exhausted the longer range stuff there. So as I say, I'm doing the seasonal model roundup tomorrow morning, or around lunchtime. Actually, I've got weekend forecast to do first. Right, that'll be earlier than normal. And then after that, we'll have the seasonal model roundup. We'll get 14 long-range models. From that, you may have guessed that if you want cold and snowy weather, the models aren't going to be all that great. But we do have to take them on board. We have to factor in what they're showing. So we'll have that final seasonal model roundup for you tomorrow at Gaz, whether it's around lunchtime.
I think we should close off soon now, and maybe just do a rather brief round of final questions if there are any.
I'll just have a look, see whether there's any final questions at Gaz Weatherby. So Johnny is saying, Gav, would you say that summer seems to be warming less than any other season at the moment? Summer since 2007 seem to be cooling rather than warming. So we haven't really had a traditionally hot summer actually for a very long time, have we? Our last traditionally hot summer was probably 2006. And even that's a little bit dubious because it was very hot in June, July, but then it went wrong in August. And then before that, probably 2003. That was generally hot from start to finish. But other than that, we haven't really had a traditionally hot summer. I'm not sure what that is, because in an overall warming sort of situation, you would think that summers would be getting a bit hotter, but we haven't really seen that in the last few years. Andy is asking, why do you think the Azores High has been so persistent in centering over Spain in recent years? So, and again, I'm not sure why that is the case. I think there is some evidence that the subtropical belts have moved a little bit further northwards from their traditional positions, probably as a result, again, we're over the can of worms, but probably as a result of climate change. We've seen the Azores High shifting a little bit further northwards over the past few years. So that may be why that's the case. But Spain has always been a very hot and dry country traditionally anyway. So whether they do see the Azores High more than they used to in Spain, I'm not sure what the evidence would be to suggest that. And I think that exhausts all the questions at Gazos. I'll just have a final look through Twitter. So looking for more questions. No, it looks like we've exhausted all the questions from Twitter, and then we'll have a look at our Facebook page, and then I'll be done on my end, I will think. So just getting the Gaz Weatherby's Facebook page up right now. So just looking to see whether there's been any more questions there. So Stephen Bird is asking, Gab, by local weather tonight said there could be wintry showers over Chiltern. So perhaps these wintry showers will get a little bit further southwards than the Midlands. Maybe there will be some wintry showers going through the Midlands, and I think again that exhausts all the questions from Gaz Weatherby's side of the discussion.
So there's no more questions on the YouTube, but yeah, I think we've answered a lot of questions today anyway. So yeah, that was good. The conclusion seems to be it's a cold week. That's coming up. Lots of potential for some snow and definitely some interesting synoptics, if not a lack of cold air though.
It's going to be seasonable, going to be pretty good conditions doing Christmas shopping. Actually, you get coat on, get scarf on, going to do Christmas shopping. It's going to feel like you would want it to be feeling like at this time of year, which is a big plus after all of the mild winters and particularly mild Decembers that we've had over the past 3 or 4 years. So I mean, it's going to be an enjoyably wintry feeling week, not severely cold, not disruptive cold. If the blocking manages to sustain itself and keeps going, maybe keeps repeating deeper into winter, eventually we will get ourselves into a really cold potentially even severely calm setup. We haven't got that for the week ahead, but it does get colder the further on we go, and through next week, and the chance will increase through next week, potentially, of something more widespread in terms of wintry weather.
Okay, so thank you everyone for watching. The video will be available on demand, and we will hopefully do a few more of these over the winter. So stay tuned for further live discussions and questions. Thanks everyone, and good night.